Welcome to another episode of Growth Unlock, where we're joined by Michael Goss, a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader with a remarkable track record of success. So, welcome with us, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Marcel. It's great to be here.
Yeah, Michael, you have founded or co founded numerous companies across various industries, including direct selling, nutritional supplement, and marketing services. And your ventures are generating significant revenue right now. So, today I'd like to dive into your insights on business strategy, customer education, marketing innovations, and we want to focus on your primary brand right now, MaxxaLive. So let me start by asking, were you always an entrepreneur or did the life's path lead you onto it by some chance or by some miracle?
Actually, I'm a second generation entrepreneur. My father started when I think he started his first company when I was 5 or 6 years old. And so I literally grew up in that company, working in every aspect of the business. I probably learned easily more about business working inside of his company than I ever did going to university. And it served me well. Even to this day, there are many of the lessons that I learned about how to take care of customers, how to take care of salespeople, how to take care of money, which is always a critical thing in business and many entrepreneurs struggle with. And early on, I didn't necessarily want to be an entrepreneur and I didn't actually see myself that way. But I think what entrepreneurs are people who see an opportunity and they see something in the market that's just not there. They see untapped potential. And I just be honest, I've got that. And so at some point I had to become an entrepreneur in the sense that one company that I started with, my father's company, within just a few years of me being there, we then had 5 or 6 different companies that I had started as a result of that one company. And so I'm not just an entrepreneur, Marcel. I'm probably considered a serial entrepreneur, and I don't think there's any recovery from it at this point.
Yeah, I know that calling where you see something and it kind of eats you alive, not being able or not doing anything about it. It's just something you need to act on. Is that calling that you can't just resist? So I completely understand. And there's of course so many lessons that you can probably share from your early upbringing and with all that experience. But is there one lesson or one message in particular that stuck with you and that you're using to this day almost on like a daily basis?
One of the things it's a great question, and we could spend hours just going back and forth with things that I've learned from that. But one of the things that I probably learned the most that sticks out even to this day is that no matter what it is that we're attempting to accomplish, and no matter what obstacle we run into, there's always a way over, around, through. There's always a way,
Hmm.
whether the government, whatever the issues are, whether it's tariffs or taxes or money, you name it, there is no obstacle that can stand in the way if and when I truly believe in my cause and I'm willing to continue to take that next step. I might not know the next 5, but if I just know the next one and be willing to take the step, even though I don't know what the outcome's going to be,
Hmm.
eventually I always make it through. And that's been something that I've seen at the small startup stages of a new venture, but I've also seen it at large places where we're scaling or even at scale. And because everywhere at every level of the business, no matter where we are in our growth cycle, we're going to come against obstacles that are seemingly insurmountable. And the obstacle that we faced in the first year or so, which was maybe a 5 or a 10, 15, $20,000 obstacle, it doesn't change. It's just the zeros get bigger. And eventually that's a $2 million obstacle or a $20 million obstacle that has to be overcome. And even though the number is bigger, the process is exactly the same. I've got to adjust my mindset. I've got to really start to believe that I can be on the other side of that problem. And when I start thinking like that, it's amazing how quickly I find solutions to my problems.
Hmm. I'd say this is one of the biggest problems because it's easier to give up than to face all these circumstances and be in that hard position, not knowing what to do. And even if you know that one step, like still having the doubts of if it's all worth it, if you're not just wasting your time. So having that kind of in your mind and knowing that you will arrive somewhere and it's just going to be a specific number of steps that you don't know yet, but eventually it will work out, is something that you always need to keep in front of yourself and reminding it to yourself, just to make it to that kind of end line that you envisioned. And I would love to kind of bridge this with MaxxaLive, because you started so many companies. You have now focus on this company in particular. And I know that you've maintained a stable revenue with minimal marketing through strong customer education. So can you share with us like what makes MaxxaLive's approach for nutritional education and customer relationships so effective?
Well, one of the things that in this particular company, people will buy, we talk about the fact that over the years, the methodologies may change. We may do it on different platforms, but the thing that drives people has really never changed. We all want to look better, feel better, live longer, be strong. Those are the things that everybody wants. Now, how do we go about getting those? That seems to change or morph over time. But the one thing that is true is if I can connect emotionally with my customer, with the solution that's built not just on the emotional side of things, so it's not just telling them what they want to hear, but it's giving them an understanding as to why my solution is going to solve their problem. We all know that as a rule, we make decisions to buy based on emotion, but then we backfill that with logic and understanding. What we've done historically is we've kind of taken that apart and we're not looking for the emotional sell.
Hmm.
Now, as a result of that, it's a slower growth cycle as we're bringing on because it takes longer because we're not appealing directly to the emotion. We're appealing more to the intellect and to the understanding. And so once a person makes a decision to buy one of our products as a result of that, this is not just something they decided, in a 20-second ad or in a 30-second pitch. This is
Hmm.
something that they've looked at and talked about for a while. There's been a number of touch points, and usually there's a significant investment on our part in information that we've provided to them. And in the olden days, that was easy to do. We could get people in a room, we could educate them. It was a different environment. Now that's changed, and there's this misnomer that people don't have attention spans anymore and they won't listen to long form content. But that's
Hmm.
just not true. The data does not support that. What people aren't willing to do now is listen to long form BS,
Hmm.
listening to long form, just flat out marketing for marketing's sake. They don't want to be sold for 2 hours, but they are willing to be educated on something they care about. And so that's been a process that I think historically has always worked. We lose sight of it in marketing sometimes because it's not the easy thing, it's not the short thing, it's not the fast thing. But from
Hmm.
our experience, it is the sustaining long thing. We've got some customers in MaxxaLive that we've had for over 20 years. And
Wow.
the reason we've been able to have those is yes, the product works. Of course, it has to be a good quality product, but that's a given. But
Hmm.
it's because they still believe in what we taught them so many years ago. And now, when new information is presented to them that goes contrary to what they learned from us, it's hard for another person to get in there and move them off of that because we're now in first position. It's going to take a higher level of logic. So a sales pitch won't do it because they don't just believe it because they had an emotional experience. They believe it here and they believe it. Their head and their heart are connected in that. And that's really hard to move someone off of that. And so as a company, when we can get to that place, now we've got, I'm not going to say a lifetime customer, our runway with that customer can go into the years and
Hmm.
versus into the months or we don't measure our customers by 4 and 5 orders. It's literally how many years have they been in it with us. Now, can we say that about everybody? Of course not, but
Hmm.
we can say that about a good number. Now, as a result of that, being once again, it's a slower process to build that way, but it's like building with concrete instead of building with sand.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy because pretty much you want for business to survive to have customers that you don't have to acquire over and over again. You just acquire them once, and then it's pretty much just free revenue rolling in because of the how good of a job you've done on the front end. And I also very appreciate that you mentioned that long form strategy, because to your point, everybody thinks that TikTok changed everything. And of course, people are looking for more action, more cuts, quicker transitions, but it's always about it content. So I would want to explore a little bit deeper onto how do you structure the long form content? What is your strategy to creating like a long form that educates and drive that point while still keeping it fresh and fun?
Well, that's the difficult thing because really we're dealing with the bottom of the funnel. At the top of the funnel, we're talking about more of what we would traditionally call, the short-term traditional advertising, something that's quick, grab, somebody that I can connect to. And we're not going to immediately take that person and dump them into a 2-hour webinar or something along those lines. They have to, in a sense, raise their hand and communicate to us, I want more of that. But in this day and age, the beautiful part is we can provide all of that to every customer. Now, not every customer wants that. Let's be honest. Not every customer wants to know how the watch is made. They just want to know what time it is. My wife is one of those people. She skims stuff. She doesn't want to know. Don't tell me why. Don't tell me all of that. Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it. So she's a very loyal customer in that regard because and if it works, she'll just continue to do that. Not everybody falls into that category. And so there's different segments, as we all know, but what we're looking to do over time is reach those customers to the degree that we can where they are. And if they're a person that wants to go deep, let's make it easy for them to go deep. Let's provide that kind of content. A lot of marketing companies don't want to do that because it just takes a lot of work and effort to do that. And you have to have somebody, in order to make it interesting, the person talking about it has to have a passion about it. I mean, think about what we're doing right here. You're not creating a 20-second clip here. You're creating content, hopefully. I mean, the goal is to create content with you and I having this discussion that someone else out there wants to hear and is willing to consume potentially 30 minutes, 45, an hour. Just occasionally, I don't do this all the time, but occasionally, I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Rogan's podcast, but Joe Rogan does sometimes
Absolutely.
3 hours just having a conversation. Steve Bartlett does these long conversations with people. And why do people listen to that? Because they like it, they want to. It's not because the people are necessarily all that entertaining. It's not the people that are entertaining, it's the information. And people right now, I think, are craving authenticity. They're craving real, and they can smell the BS, the marketing BS, a mile away. So if we will be genuine, and that's why coming back, if going back real quickly to our conversation earlier about being an entrepreneur and some of the challenges, one of the things that helps gets us through, my opinion, is when we understand why we're doing what we do. And if why I'm doing what I do is driven by passion, is driven by truly something that I would do, whether I made a dime doing this or not, then I'm doing it because I love it. And when I love something like that, and I'm talking about what it is that I love, you may not love it, but you can definitely recognize if I do.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to pick up very quickly whether or not I'm being genuine or authentic or not. And so one of the things that I think that has really leveled the playing ground with social media, and I saw this starting to turn in the early 2000s, probably in 3, 4, and 5. I didn't understand Facebook. It was just getting going at the time. My nephew was in college, at university, and he was telling me about it and telling me how these people would go do this. And I said, why would they do that? Why would they tell all of their world? Why would they tell that and share that with everybody? What do they get out of it? And how much does it cost? They said, well, it doesn't cost anything. Well, at the time, we didn't really know exactly just how valuable the data was, but the data was extremely powerful, and Facebook obviously figured that out very early on. But in that, what the kids were starting to identify very quickly is they smell BS a mile away, and they could smell it in a social media environment. And so now we've been tuned to that. So when you're scrolling through, you're looking for somebody that connects with you on a real, genuine level. And so when I'm talking to somebody right now, I'm talking to you on a video phone, that connection is real. And if someone else happens to stumble onto this, hopefully that energy between you and me that is real, they would connect and identify with. And so in our long form content, that's the most important. It's not about creating the perfect script, which has always been my thing. Well, if I could just create the perfect script and just say exactly the right words, it's going to work. No, it's really not about that. Is what we're saying real? Is what we're saying what we believe? Is what we are saying what our position really is? Then it's going to have more impact. And so this is the hard part of marketing today. Used to, you could hire somebody and kind of just throw stuff out there. Now, I think as a brand, we have to be more in touch with our values. We have to be more in touch with why we're doing what we're doing. It's not just good enough that we're putting out a better mousetrap or a better product, but why are we in the business at all? What's our motivation? What's the spirit behind what it is that we do? And when we can communicate that, because we're not trying to communicate that, we're just being,
Yeah.
then we'll find that this process of creating long form content is not so difficult. I told a guy, one of my marketing guys the other day, we were talking about this, and I was like, when you create a loom for me, and in the process of you creating that loom, you get bored. Guess what? You're boring me now. I get bored because I have that same feeling that you get because you're conveying that to me. So if I'm not putting forth content, if I'm not putting forth information that I'm truly passionate and excited about, then I'm just making noise. And I don't think those are going to be very effective. And so that to me is the interesting juxtaposition that we have now in the marketing world, because it's not just copy. It's not just having a pretty face that can parrot what it is that you tell them, but being able to communicate an authentic message to your customers is a critical part of this process.
Yeah, I think that you totally hit the nail on the head there, because when you're talking about something passionately, as we do here, it's just naturally that energy that drives you. And you can be talking about, like, for that matter, about absolutely anything, even if it's some kind of BS, but people will still follow up with you because they feel the energy that you're projecting. And if you believe in what you're saying, it's just given that that energy comes in. And as you said, perfect script is not necessary, because if you're saying from the heart, from your belief, people will just get it, and they always only takes whatever they find valuable about that message. So they may be interested in just the brand story or specific outcome that they'll get, but they will more be sold on your energy and then find that piece of information that they were missing to make the decision. So I really love this strategy, because I'm always promoting the long form editorials, long form videos, and having the product page that's mostly made for, or like in a B2B style, where you're trying to sell to someone one on one. Why not doing that with a customer with like a long form, if you know how to speak to them and how to sell it as you were selling it to the investor or to a partner, right? I really like this idea. And I want to take this and ask you about Formore as one of the brands that you've built and sold before and had some great success with that. What have you maybe learned by building and selling the brand that you apply to MaxxaLife strategy?
Well, it's interesting because, and I think I you mentioned this to you before, that when Formore began, it began as a direct sales or a network marketing company, which means that we used distributors, individuals spreading our word about our products and our company. It was all word of mouth. We did not have an advertising budget. We did not run ads. We didn't do any of that. We leveraged relationships with other people who believed in what we were doing. They believed in the products or the company, and they would share that with people that they knew. And so, in a sense, what we paid for in that regard was their influence
Hmm.
within their particular group or their particular network of people. And that worked very, very well. Now, the internet came in and immediately it started to have some upset that process in the short term. But in reality, what's interesting is we're right back where we started as a company, so to speak, because now one of the most valuable resources you can have as a company are other people's voices, other people's audiences, people that have influence, sharing your story, your products with people that have trust and belief in them. And
Hmm.
the difference now versus say before is you could hire a celebrity, you could have endorsers like that you paid, and that worked for a long time. It doesn't work to the same degree that it once did because people will look at that and think, well, that person doesn't really use that product.
Mm,
Whereas an influencer, whether that's on YouTube or any other social media process, maybe an Instagram influencer, they believe that person genuinely believes what it is that they're saying. They just wouldn't, because they've got trust in that individual. And because they have trust, they don't know my company from Adam. But because they have trust in that person, they're willing to risk taking a chance with our company because they trust the person that's telling them. So we then get to vicariously ride on the trust back, because building trust with your customer is a critical part of the equation. But we can bypass a lot of that if I have somebody that you trust say, you know, Marcel, you should give this product a shot. I think it would help you. Okay. And you'll give it that try. Well, when you do that, now we have that open door and that opportunity, and we go in with pre-built belief already. You believe something about us that we haven't earned because you don't know us really. You only know us through another person. And so
mm,
we're basically coming right back around to building those relationships again, not just with an influencer in the sense of some person that's got hundreds of thousands of people, but in many cases, maybe someone that has a few hundred or
mm,
a few thousand. But the relationships that they've built are very strong and they're very connected, and it's a tight community. So they wouldn't risk that for just anything. And
mm,
so when we as a company, and this is something we have to take very seriously, when we get into that situation, it's not just about getting thousands and hundreds of thousands of people to do this. It's about getting
mm,
the right people. And remember, they're risking their reputation on my company and my products. We've got to treat that, to me, it's more valuable than gold, because with it, we can churn lots and lots of gold if we honor those relationships and if we for sure produce an excellent product that is going to stand the test of time. So when you have those things in place, then building a company based on relationships is sustainable. If my product is
mm,
not very good, if I don't have good strong morals and values as a company, if I don't do what I say, if I don't make it easy for people to send their products back and let's give them their money back, if I will do those things and just be a good human as a company, so to speak, and do the right things, then that will sustain the relationships, because I don't want to ever do anything to that customer that's going to reflect badly on the person that referred us to them. And so that's the interesting thing that I would say that we at MaxxaLive, which we started this way, but we got out of that probably more than a decade ago to go into
mm.
direct sales, just direct selling, direct marketing to our customers. But now we're seeing, once again, the difficulty as a company to build an audience is not as easy, because people don't want to connect to a company. They want to connect to a person. And what's easier to do that and build it ourselves, or just go find the people that have already done that work and then reward them if we get access to their group and if we have success? It's just a little different mindset, but at the same time, it's one that we've made a lot of money with over the years and built a greatly successful company that went all over the world. And most of the new markets that we entered, we didn't have to risk anything to get into those markets. So it was really, from a company standpoint, it was it was very economically efficient. I'll just put it that way.
Mm.
Especially at the time when we did some of that, we were a relatively small company. And so this allows your company and your brand to expand beyond the borders of what you think is possible, and it can scale extremely quickly.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with the idea that you need to be treating every single customer with the utmost respect and with the utmost thought in mind that you need to do good by them as a human rather than the company. Because to take it to the extreme, even every single person has obviously family, friends. There can be a very good referral source if you do good by them. And yeah, they're happy with the product, they were happy with the support, they're happy with the company. So to work with influencers or content creators is of course one of the basic strategies, but even referrals, something that is not most commonly spoke of in b2c, is something powerful, because just simple recommendation can launch an avalanche of basically having this huge net forming where people just recommend the product because of their great experience. And it sometimes doesn't even have to do anything with the product itself. It's just how the company is treating you and how they are connecting with you, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And because there's an emotional element to that. Because to think about when you've been willing to talk to another person about your experience with something, it's because you had something emotional occurred. It's not just something in your head necessarily. Most of the time, you have an actual emotional connection to that, and you're able to transfer that to another person. And because I'm not willing to just talk about much to just friends of mine, unless it's something I really believe in or that I really trust, because it's my reputation on the line at that point. And so I'll just say, we as a company take that very seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah. Amazing. And I want to talk about an interesting shift that you're doing right now with the company, going from the interruption methodology to targeting active searches, right? And we know there's obviously Google is one of the best platforms to just target people that are searching for specific things. But what's driving this strategic pivot for you, and what challenges are you anticipating with that?
Well, and we're not completely eliminating the interruptive marketing. That still plays a role. But I think in a well-rounded marketing strategy, depending on the niche that you're in, if you're in something that people are actively looking for, that's just one of those things. It takes extra work. It's something you have to be a little more specific in. A lot of times, and this has been my experience in the past, I wanted to kind of do one thing and it just worked everywhere.
Mm.
And that that's just lazy. And sometimes as a businessman, I'm lazy where marketing is concerned, because I don't want to do it 5 different ways for 5 different platforms. Can't we just do one thing? And so a lot of people do. They just find one thing that works and they stay in that lane until it wears itself out. But in the search space inside of Google, that's one of the things that those people are looking for it already. And we know
Mm.
there are searches that are out there that are highly competitive, so they're going to be very expensive. But there's lots and lots of other searches that are out there. And here's the other thing. Before, Google was kind of the king of that, and I'm not saying they're not, but now basically every platform that's out there is becoming a search engine of sorts. So Facebook is now a search engine. TikTok is a huge search engine. In potentially 2 to 3 years, people may not be, I'm not saying Google's going away, but the number of people that are going to get their search information from Google may start to go down just because they're on these platforms and they find places that they can trust. So they're going to be looking for new voices that people can trust. And our goal is those searches are happening whether we do anything about it or not. What if we put ourselves in that situation? And it's a combination of search engine optimization, but also paid traffic, where we're going to go after underserved markets. We're going to go after niches within our parameter where we can make good ground, where we can find, because people that are looking for it on Google are a different kind of customer. They're more of the
Mm.
kind of customer that education is going to work for. They're going to not only look on Google, but they're probably also looking on YouTube. And YouTube is one of the least expensive ways to get awareness and to get your voice and things out there in terms of YouTube ads. I'm not talking about just putting on YouTube videos, but I'm talking
Yeah.
about running ads specific. You can get really granular in who you want to show
And we're
your
long form.
messages to. That's right. It could be long format, it could be short format. There's a number of ways that you can lead them from there to get them to the places that you want them to go to hear what it is that you've got to hear. But now you remember, people that are looking for some of these things, they're doing it because they're desperate. They're doing it because they're looking for an answer, and nothing yet has solved it. I do this every now and again. I'm on there looking for at Google for things, and as I go through, I'm going through page after page. Like, I can't find anything specifically on point, and it's because no one's created it yet. And so
Mm.
if we can find those niches, and it's kind of like finding needle in a haystack or finding gold, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes research. But at the same time, it's not a difficult thing to then match that search term with my H1 headers and create content that people that are looking for that are going to want to consume. And once they do, it doesn't mean they'll get them that first time, but it hardly costs me anything to do that. So as a percentage of my overall budget and having a well-rounded strategy, that's one of the things that I think I've kind of had discounted for many years.
Hmm.
But I guess taking over a Google agency changed my because I see the value in that. And we're having great success with e-commerce brands, with some nonprofit situations, a number of things that we're having success just within Google. This particular agency doesn't do any other kinds of marketing but Google. So I took that over a few months, it's going close to a year now, but that I stepped in and I wanted to have that as a part of what we were doing because
Hmm.
Google is still one of the most dominant search uh, platforms on the planet, and it probably will be for some years to come. And so that idea of moving away from the metrics of people going through their phone and enjoying something, and then, hey, one of my ads pops up.
Yeah.
Well, I may or may not be at the right place at the right time, but with Google, I can be exactly the right person that that customer is looking for if I know what they're searching for. And there's plenty of ways for me to find out that information.
Absolutely. And I think mostly YouTube is very, very underrated in the mix because everybody just thinks like, yeah, basic search campaigns, maybe some shopping, performance max, you're appearing everywhere. But YouTube as a platform is fairly undervalued because I would say from my personal experience, TikTok and YouTube being the new search engines because you'd rather watch a short video than to go through, as you said, all of the pages on Google and try to find a blog that actually doesn't try to sell you something, but it's valuable, right? So I think this goes to say that Google will definitely be around for some time now. And YouTube, on top of it, is one of the, I would say, mostly very education heavy or understanding heavy products where you need to explain a bit more why is it important or what does it do. I think these platforms are going to be absolutely crucial for having that option to explain more and to basically attend to the rest of the funnel, like middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, just attending that to that customer that wants to learn more or needs that kind of final information to get through the fence. That's where YouTube comes in handy. And I'm curious because you mentioned it comes into your overall budget and you're budgeting these different platforms and different ways of getting in front of people. In terms of percentages, how much are you spending on the interruption marketing versus the search marketing? And let's say if you're doing YouTube, how much goes to YouTube itself?
Well, and that's going to depend on product and the niche that we're going after. So one of the things that I don't think there's a one size fits all.
Mhm.
It somewhat depends because it's where are the people that you're looking for or that would be ideal for what you're looking for. Your customer avatar, your the persona that you're attempting to attract. Where are you going to find those people and get in front of them at the what I'd like to say is the lowest cost per acquisition. I think we all believe that
Yeah.
that's what we want to do. And so that's why a combination of plays becomes important. And so it depends on how much money we have to play with in terms of budget. You know, anything less than say $10,000 a month in advertising budget, you're probably going to want to concentrate it in the platform you feel the most confidence in.
Mhm.
As that starts to grow, and as we start to create that one revenue stream, now we want to start to siphon some of that revenue off. And now let's build a next one. So, for instance, if I were launching, say, a consumer brand now, as soon as I could get onto TikTok, I would probably want to do that and get my TikTok shop going and start marketing on TikTok for a consumer brand. Then I might also add on to that Meta and Instagram. I might not do much Google at that point because depending on the price of my product, the margins that I'm working with, it just might not make sense. But
Mhm.
if my product, like for MaxxaLive, for instance, it doesn't require, but it benefits greatly from education. It benefits greatly for having somebody that's looking to be talked to about this. Now Google and YouTube start to have a lot more value for that kind of brand because the LTV, the long term value of the customer I can pull from that is significantly more than something I could probably get off of a TikTok sale. TikTok
Mm.
probably here today, gone tomorrow. I don't know if I can count on that to be here a year from now or 2 years from now. It's a little more trendy. It's a little more short term. So if I want to build more of a long term process here, then I'm going to take a decent percentage of my revenue stream and I'm putting that into YouTube and Google advertising
Mm.
because that allows me to get direct access to the kinds of people I need to potentially test my funnels, to test everything else, and to get me right access to the kind of data that I'm going to need in order to make not just gut decisions on these things, but also have data driven elements to my marketing because I need a little bit of both of that. And so, I know this is kind of a tough question because I just don't believe there's a one size fits all. And I don't want to shy away from that. I would say the way I would look at that is I would do my market research and I would attempt to understand where is the best bang for my marketing dollar on which platform. And in the short term, I would concentrate it in my place where I'm going to have my biggest opportunity. And then over time, I would start, as I start to scale, then I want to spin up other sources of that revenue. Eventually, getting on all of those, but maybe not spending money on all of them.
Mm.
So even though I may be spending money over here running Google ads, doesn't mean I'm not posting on Facebook and posting on TikTok. Okay. That's just something maybe we're going to do as a part of our strategy, just have content out there so that at some point when we decide to turn that on, we're a known quantity. And then the
Mm.
second part is what's great about all these platforms is that all these platforms do have their niche marketers. They do have their people that are building their clientele, their influence networks, if you will. They're building those right now on all of these platforms. So I don't necessarily have to go onto TikTok and be that person if I can find the right people there, if that's the right demographic and if that's the right place for me to market what it is that I'm selling. I don't know that I would do a lot of B2B products on TikTok yet, but who knows down the road. What I would say is don't be closed off to any of that. Be
Mm.
open to everything. It doesn't mean I jump today, but I think it's a good idea to be studying. If it's a long term something, it'll be good tomorrow if it's good today. Those deals that say, well, if I don't do it today, it won't be good tomorrow. Well, then I wouldn't waste my time on that because that's not going to last. But TikTok, I think that is here to stay. It appears it's going to be here for a while. And so I think it's worth everyone taking time to really dig into it. I can remember the very few first times I was on TikTok. I was hearing about it. It was a few years ago, and I hated it. I'll just be honest. I absolutely despised TikTok at the time. But the longer I did it, the more I started to enjoy it. And so now I spend more time on TikTok than I do on any other social platform. I spend a little time on X, and I don't I don't love X, and I never have. I don't spend much time on Facebook anymore. I pretty much spend time on TikTok. And from a social standpoint, that's one of my favorite places to be now because I can rapidly go through so many different things. And so that's just me. And I'm not a young turkey anymore. But if we're going to be a part of building a brand for 10 years from now, and if we're not on TikTok, I think we're missing the boat.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's very healthy if you're willing to, as you said, not to kind of hate something and just write it off straight away, but to try and learn it. And I'm also glad that you've mentioned how are you treating the budget, because I think there's never one size fits all when it comes to marketing, when it comes to e-com. Every product is different. There's that major question where your audience is, because the audience psychology is always the same, the marketing principles are the same, but the platforms where the audience hangs out, what they're looking for, always change. And this is where you need to navigate and also work with your budget so you can allocate it accordingly and know where you should put it. So I'm very glad that you kind of explain it in that way, because although there are some like Pareto rules or some percentages flying around, it's always about your best knowledge of where your customer is and where you can get the most efficient return so you can reinvest the profits. Yeah, talking about TikTok, I know it's one of your major focuses for 2025. So I want to definitely ask you, how are you planning to balance the platform's viral potential and what it can do with your emphasis on sustainable relationship building? Because we know TikTok is about fast connections, it's about fast information, maybe content that's very young people oriented, and it doesn't really promote that sustainable relationship building. So how are you maybe approaching this challenge?
Well, and that's a great, I'll be just honest with you. We haven't figured all of that out just yet because it is been described as the wild, wild west from a marketing standpoint. It's still fairly wide open, although it's not the easiest platform to get into in terms of as a marketer, as a salesperson. We're still struggling to get even qualified as a to create a TikTok shop through our MaxxaLive platform. Now we can go on there and run ads and do other things, but being actually inside the system, like it would be to be inside of Amazon, similar process to get inside of Amazon.
Hmm.
And but you got to decide whether or not that's really what you want to do. And honestly, I can't tell you the answer to that just yet. It seems like the right place to be. Whether or not it is for MaxxaLive or not, I don't know today. What I do know is that the people that need our product, millions and millions of them, are on TikTok.
Hmm.
And we can get in front of those people somehow on TikTok, then that can hopefully start the conversation. Now, our objective of that is always to lead that conversation off platform. That's one of the reasons why we've avoided Amazon for so long, even though I do have some products that some of our nutritionals that we do sell on Amazon. I never wanted to be on Amazon because that's where people go to buy cheap stuff. And not only
Hmm.
that, Amazon's in control of the whole process. They're in control. It's their customer, not mine. So it was very difficult for us to develop a relationship, a direct relationship with our customer. And as a result of that, we've just avoided Amazon for those very reasons. TikTok may turn out to be the same. I can't say that yet. But our objective
Hmm.
is to ultimately connect through that platform, just like we would do on any platform, but lead them off platform to connect with us directly so that we can hopefully develop that relationship. It's too early to tell whether or not we're successful in that. If it turns out just to be churn, then we may look at that down the road and go, it's not worth it. Or it may just be one of those things. It's a paid advertising churn. And if you can turn that over and have it at least pay for itself or even something like that, the number of people that do come out of it, because there's always going to be a percentage of people that buy products on any of these platforms that are probably going to continue. It may not be 100%, it may only be 10 or 15%. But in reality, if 10 or 15% of the people that on a traditional marketing scale, if 10 or 15% of the people that you interact with are still buying your product a year or 2 years from now, that's numbers that most of us would welcome because at least it gives us something sustainable to know that over time, I'm going to be a count on if I do $1 million in new revenue, then what I've just added to my bottom line is $150,000 in
Hmm.
perpetuity, or at least over the next 4 to 5 years. And if I can do that kind of volume off of a platform like TikTok, then it will be money well spent and it will be time well spent because it's really honestly, it's right now, it's more time and energy than money. It's not a money issue. It's a time issue of dealing with all the little regulatory elements that they have inside of their platform. Because we've got a nutritional program, and so they treat nutritional products differently than they would treat, say, some sort of electronic device, or a skincare product is going to be different than that. So those are the things that are nuanced based on what the product is that I'm selling. But we're actively
Hmm.
going after that. And I would love to be able to come back to you at the end of the year or maybe early next year and say, here's been what our ultimate experience has been on TikTok.
We'll do another episode after a year to analyze all of that. But as you said, like, and as we discussed before, I think it's very important that you understand where your audience is and if the cost of opportunity in this point of time, it's pretty much time on your end, it's worth it to explore the platform, and if you have the capabilities and the bandwidth to do it effectively. It always comes down to just analyzing the cons and pros of pretty much just expanding and being on another channel, because everybody thinks like, yeah, I want to be omnipresent, I want to be everywhere, but you also want to be spending the budget with them with having in mind that you want to not only build that attention, but of course keep your business profitable, so you can be responsive for your team, for your customers, for everybody that is depending on you. So it's that cost opportunity and right evaluation that you need to always keep in mind. And there's of course the platforms, and then there's tech that of course is leading the growth, and AI is a hot topic nowadays. I know that you mentioned when we spoke before the podcast that you want to expand AI usage beyond just the basic content assistance and some regular usage that many brands do have. So what kind of specific automation capabilities are you looking for and want to maybe implement to transform your marketing operations?
Well, actually, as you were talking just then about what I would call the overhead of managing multiple platforms. And so we don't all talk, that's one of the things I don't think as a business we always, I don't know if we give pay enough heed to, is the overhead that it takes to maintain presences on all of these platforms.
Mm,
To do it well, there is an overhead cost. And I'm not talking about money all. In some cases, it's just time and energy. And I got to remember we just made a change to our logo brand colors. Now I've got to get that across every one of these platforms and do it. Those are things that sometimes we don't take into account. And that's some of the hidden costs that surround some of this. And so one of the things that we're doing actively because of that, and this is one of the areas where I think AI potentially is going to have a tremendous impact on our business, is being able to utilize and leverage AI to help us take the content that we create and then disseminate that in a more automated fashion and in a manner to the various platforms that write for those platforms. So we know that, a clip that's going to be great, let's say on an Instagram reel or a Facebook reel or even a YouTube short, well, that's not going to be appropriate for a TikTok type
mm,
video. So being able to have AI cut these bits and pieces up into the types of content that is appropriate for the various platforms, and then have it actually actively placing all of that. So the maintaining of the scheduling and the placing of the videos and whatever it is that we're doing on these various platforms, actually handle the distribution of that. That's
mm,
something that I think, we could do that with people, but we can also do it with fewer people with more AI agents. We can do that by automating those parts of the process. We can still stay in
mm,
complete control over the content creation. So we can still use AI to assist in content creation. And that's what I think it's only good for, assisting in content creation. When we allow AI to just do it all and we don't put our hands on it, it just comes across stale. It's not going to ultimately work for you. It's not going to be really, truly authentic. So using AI to help us with ideas and to help us with, headlines and a way to say something is one thing. Having it just write everything that we do is not a good idea, in my opinion. And that's why I don't think AI is ever going to truly be able to replace me or replace people that think. But at the same time, it can truly become a big help to us. And so that's where I'm looking at. I'm not personally looking for it to answer my emails or to be me and to act and talk like me in those environments. But what I do like the idea of is being able to take something that we do, say a long form piece of content that we create for YouTube, and we've already got it there, and then be able to have that cut up into lots of different pieces and have that feed our social media platforms for the next 30 days.
mm.
And the
Yeah.
amount of investment that took was the same because I was going to create the YouTube video anyway. And
Mm,
so I've created 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, whatever it is. It could be a podcast like we're talking right here. And then have that then chopped up in a way that now we can automate that via AI. And It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. I probably still need to have people that put eyes on those things and make sure before it goes out that we've looked at it. By and large, I think the more comfortable we get with that, the more automated those processes can be. And now it's just like what we used to do in the factories. We had a factory when we made our nutritional. I don't know if I told you this, but when my dad started the company that became Formore International, his goal was to be the manufacturer. And so early
Mm,
on in the process, we didn't manufacture everything, but we did a lot of the packaging. So we would bring the finished product in, but we would put it in the bottles ourselves. We put the labels on the lids and put it in the boxes. Most all of that was done by hand. So we had a lot of people do it. So a lot of people would come in and we'd do all that. And it was a lot of fun. We'd have a team that would attack that. Well, by the time
mm,
it got done, we did that whole process and hardly anybody touched anything. It was all automated. We used equipment. People oversaw it, but done right, we just had to watch and just make sure there
yeah.
were enough bottles in the hopper so that just keep stuff going in. That's really what I see how we're going to be able to use AI going forward in all companies to do that. And I know it's overwhelming right now. I know it's seemingly it's so many different AI and everything's got AI now, and it's nearly getting to the point of I don't want to hear about it anymore. But you have to
Yeah.
block that out. And one of the things about being a seasoned marketer and a seasoned business person is we can never get stuck in a fixed mindset. We always have to remain flexible in our thinking. The neuroplasticity in our brain actually can get rigid if we don't allow ourselves to be challenged by new ideas and new things. And AI is one of those things. TikTok is one of those things that
Mm,
it challenges us in the short term because I don't want to not know something again. I didn't know anything when I was a kid and I hated it. And then I got to the place where I was an expert in something. And then the world changes. And now, how do I stay on top of that? I have to continually feed. I have to continually feed because the moment I stop is honestly the moment I start decaying, the moment I start
mm,
leaving this planet. So, this is one of those things that I actually love about living in the time we are today is the flip side of the fact that there's always change. There's uncertainty with that. But on the other side of that, there's tremendous opportunity. And guess what? If I figured it out before, I can figure it out again. Like we said before, there's always a solution. And so I don't have to become the full on expert in AI. There's always somebody out there that is, that I can hire, that can come in and implement these things so that we as a company can benefit from the leverage and capabilities that AI presents, which are remarkable because we're no longer just being able to leverage energy and the backs of people, but now we're actually starting to be able to leverage some level of understanding and reasoning and logic at a level that was difficult to do before if you weren't some sort of computer. So it's a remarkable time in which we live. I'm not scared about AI. I actually love it, and when it's working well, it's one of my best friends.
yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with this because uh in my opinion, like if you're not growing, you're decaying. Like there's no stale state, and it's just like your thought of not feeling bad about not growing that leads you to that. But ultimately, it works for you because the market changes so much. Like there's economic crisis, there's people being more education driven than before. You always need to be innovating. So being in this kind of mindset is completely vital to even stay in the game and to outcompete everybody else on just some basic thing as the time and pretty much just serving your customers for longer than they do. So I really love how you're approaching things and exploration because I also believe that AI is going to replace 70-80% of the hard work while we'll be doing the 20-25% finishing work of all the inputs and outputs we get from all the tools that we'll be using. And I would love to end our conversation with my favorite question, which is what are maybe some of your predictions for 2025 and the next years in terms of technology and maybe also, of course, the e commerce? What are you expecting some new trends and some new, maybe interesting ideas being formed?
Well, one of the things that I think that's happening now is because we've talked this before about how trends, things are cyclical. The old saying is what goes around comes around. And just as we were talking earlier about how relational marketing is making this major comeback, and honestly, it never really went anywhere. It just morphed, it just changed. One of the other trends that I think you're going to see more and more is the ability for a much higher touch experience for the customer. And this
Mm,
is where I think AI is going to play a role as well. But so many more people now want for lack of a better term, a custom experience. And before, to get a customized experience or what we would call a high touch experience, it was very expensive for a company to provide that. But
mm,
we have way more leveraging elements in place now that allow us as a company to create a very unique and customer centric pathway. And of course, one of our big businesses is in the health business. Before a couple of years ago, I had a diagnostic laboratory, a medical laboratory that we built during COVID. And one of the things that has always been out there, but been a struggle to monetize and make work right, is the idea of things such as concierge medicine, but on scale, where we
mm,
can allow people to take more autonomy and more control over their own experience, both in a health
mm,
sense, in a life sense. And you saw a lot of that start to, I think, gain a lot of traction during the COVID years because people were locked down. They couldn't go do the things that they could do before. But I think for a lot of folks, it was a real opportunity for them to evaluate what it is that they do with their lives. And does it matter? Am I making a difference? Is this really what I want to spend the rest of my life doing? If this is the end, was this a life well lived? And I think a
mm,
lot of people started to make the shift where meaning in what they do it starts to have so much more impact. And I say that to say that in that same time frame that people are having this experience like that of wanting more freedom, you had governments and other big organizations attempting to limit more and more of that freedom.
mm,
And I think you're going to see more and more people opt out of what I would say the traditional ways of things happening. And we've already seen that in the media with news and information like that, that's been decentralized. Well, now, as a result of that, all the big companies that used that methodology as their way of communicating, those are breaking down too. So big pharma, I'm tempting big government, all of these different entities and institutions, they no longer hold the same weight in the eyes of the public that they once did. So there's a lot of room now for companies like ours, health focused companies. And it doesn't have to be health just in your physical body, but it could be other things where you can combine not only the product side of what we do, the education side of what we do, the opportunity side where someone could actually get excited about what we're doing and the mission they're on and join us and actually build a business where that's all they talk about all day long because it's something they're passionate about. And they can now monetize that in a way that they couldn't before. It's so much more efficient to do that now. And that we can also offer things like laboratory testing and other things shipped right to your house, right to your lab. You don't have to go to the doctors. You can opt out of that system to the degree that you choose to. Those kinds of things, a more personalized approach, I think you're going to see that more and more. And people are going to be willing to spend lots of money on that, on the food that they're getting. They're going to want to opt out of the big agricultural type foods. We're also seeing that with pets. So with all of the stuff, we're now seeing in certain demographics that they own more pets. There are more pets in that environment than there are kids. And so I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it because we're going after it. We're building a brand right now that's a health food brand for dogs and for animals. Now we did that for years under Formore. We would take our products and feed them to animals and have great results with them, but we did never specifically create brands around that. But now you're seeing people willing to
mm,
spend a lot more money to create a healthy animal because what they've been feeding them for
mm,
up to this point is not good. So that's another trend that you can pay attention to. Anything that people are willing to do for themselves, they're also going to be willing to do for their pets. See, pet insurance, That's happening. I think you'll also continue to see on a macro level the businesses more and more big money coming in and taking over boring industries. In the United States, I don't know if this is the case in Europe, but in the US, veterinary services, for instance, is being nearly all the independent veterinary clinics now are being bought up by big, funds. And so they're starting to stack dozens within hundreds, even thousands of clinics inside of a single entity as a unit and start to operate them that way. And I think you're going to see more and more of things like that, where more and more of the people that want to do business don't want to do the business side of the business. The
Mm,
veterinary got into it because they wanted to treat the dog. The doctor got into it because they wanted to treat the patient. They didn't do it because they wanted to bill in. They didn't do it because they wanted to bill in insurance and they wanted to deal with the rent and all of the people that they want to deal with all that. So having other companies that come in and handle all that and that they can get a piece of that, but also they can spend their life doing what it is that they have a passion for. I think you're going to see more and more of that, which allows people like you and me, entrepreneurs that are willing to deal with the business side of stuff, that's going to give
yeah.
us more opportunities to do what we do. And if we'll be good and continue to get good at telling our stories and at communicating to the people that we're doing business with and loving on them and being appreciative for what they bring to the table, I don't think there's any reason why we can't expect that the next 5 to 10 years are going to be the greatest 5 to 10 years for those that go into this and really go for it. These will be the next 5 years are going to be the best 5 to 10 years of our history.
Yeah, I love it, and I think so as well. Like with the progress we've seen so far, right, from just like and pretty much how quickly the technology evolves, I'm quite excited to basically see all of this come true. And I believe that when we have maybe another episode a year or two down the line, that there will be so many new things that we've tried, tested, failed with, and kind of discovered and working with moving forward. That we'll have another 2 3 hours just to cover those things. So,
I
but
look
this was
forward.
very
I do look.
very yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This was really fruitful. Thank you, Michael, for sharing everything that you shared, all the information. I think that many brands will hopefully start doing a little bit more long form and a little bit more YouTube, as it's still something that is coming around. Yeah, I'm excited to see how we're going to be leveraging AI, and of course, in that conversation, what kind of progress you do with MaxxaLive and with all the other projects.
Well, I appreciate that, Marcel. And I just remember, hey, let's be patient. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and we'll eventually get there.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for watching. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episodes. Have a nice one.